And now, the Alan Brady Show.
Hi, I'm Alan Brady. You remember me from the Alan Brady Show?
Yes, if Alan needs any help. Shut up, Mel. Yes, sir. Shut up, Mel. Shut up, Mel. Yes, sir.
I had the best TV writers on my show. Rob Petrie, Sally Rogers.
Hey, I got it. Don't anybody move.
And Buddy Sorrell.
Well, how you moved, I forgot it.
On the Dick Van Dyke Show here.
Alan, if you're...
Shut up, Mel. On MeTV.
Weeknights at 9:30, 8:30 Central on MeTV.
What's the matter with you?
Hi, I'm John Malos, and welcome to Connect with Me on this Monday morning. It's on the air, off the presses with Dennis Hart of KMJ Radio. We're going to run the gamut today. We're going to talk about his book. It's called Monitor. It's the second edition. We'll talk politics. We'll talk about the media. Hey, and we'll talk about the Giants' victory over the Cardinals last night. 559-265-4331. Back in a moment.
Tonight I want to discuss the importance of the television medium to the American people.
And today is on the air, off the presses here on Connect with Me, live on Comcast 187 and 43.6 on this, well, kind of a rainy day here on this Monday morning. You know, I want to talk about this book. It's called Monitor. This is the second edition, written by Dennis Hart of KMJ Radio. And Monitor, you might ask me, what is Monitor? What is that? Well, that was a radio program produced and aired by NBC Radio from 1955 to 1975. They were so far ahead of their time when they did it. They had a whole host of guests, and Dennis wrote the book about it. I spent a couple of weeks reading it. I'm going through it a second time. I'm on chapter 5 for the second time. We're going to talk to Dennis about his book. We'll talk about the media. Live in our studio right now is Dennis Hart of KMJ Radio. He's a longtime broadcaster, started his career at Channel 30 as a reporter, as a sports reporter, I believe. We'll talk to him about that. Was that sports, or was that was sports and news? That's right. He's been in the business a long time, both television and radio. We'll talk to him about politics, about the media, and about all sorts of other things, including the San Francisco Giants and the run that they made the last two series, first against Cincinnati. Last night they won Game 6 against the Cardinals at AT&T Park. You see, I was telling the truth. I'm here at AT&T Park, sitting in lower box section 132, row 22, and seat number 2. And if you walk over here with me, you can see how close I am to the field. There's home plate right there. St. Louis, the Cardinals just got done with batting practice, and we're waiting for the game to start. And if you look right over here, there's the left field foul pole. We're about 45 minutes or so away from the first pitch here at AT&T Park. And in that amount of time, this place will be gearing up, and it will be rocking and rolling. It will be Game 6 of the National League Championship Series between the St. Louis Cardinals and the San Francisco Giants. Giants going to win?
Oh, yeah.
How about you?
North Bay, Giants are going to win.
So are the Giants going to win?
Absolutely.
I hope so. I hope so. Where are you guys from?
San Mateo.
San Mateo.
Well, they did win, but they got one more to go. It's Game 7. Who knows if they'll play that tonight or not. Could be rained out, and they'll have to play it tomorrow. We're going to be back with Dennis Hart, though. We'll talk about all this stuff, including politics and his book, Monitor. 265-4331 is the number. Can't wait.
Ventura TV Appliance Center. We're the low-price leading brands reliable advice place. The Whirlpool Dream Kitchen Get Yours Today place. Check this out. Right now, get huge savings on select Whirlpool appliances and pay no interest when paid in full within 6 months. At the hometown low price, think outside the big box place. Since 1951, Ventura TV Appliance Center. We're working hard to be your place.
If you haven't heard of Monitor, I highly recommend the book. It is a great, great read. Dennis Hart is here, my friend. I've known you a long time. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for inviting me on this.
And I should say to your audience, last month we had you scheduled and the power went out. I don't know what happened.
I don't know if that was an omen or what. Yeah, we couldn't get on the air, and you had promoted me, and at least 3 people were interested in watching, people I knew, so it didn't happen.
I heavily promoted you on Friday, so we knew that you were going to be here as long as everything went okay. But I love your book. And Monitor. Now, this was written at a time in the early 50s. You talk about this in the book. In the early 50s, radio was on the way out, television was on the way in. Why did the president of NBC at that time, Pat Weaver, decide to put on this radio program called Monitor?
This was really, John, an act of desperation and inspiration. Network radio was dying, and for people who have never heard network radio, it had exactly the same type of programming that television does today.
What was the desperation? Was it the fact that radio was dying and TV was
television was
moving
running
in
across the country and doing the same type of half-hour comedy, drama, variety shows that network radio had pioneered 20, 25 years earlier. So network radio was dying, and Weaver came up with this really incredible, audacious idea that could not work, right? A 40 consecutive hour broadcast live from Radio Central on the 5th floor of the RCA building, now the GE building in New York.
8 a.m. on Saturday.
8 a.m. Saturday to midnight Sunday. And it would have everything, big name hosts from the world of television. It would have comedy, sports, variety, anything interesting, informative, entertaining that was going on anywhere in the country, Monitor covered live or on tape. It spanned the country throughout the weekend.
Spanned the world.
It did. Did something television could not do because television didn't have the capability of going live. Monitor could. Had audio signals, telephone lines, etc. Anything that took place in the country that was interesting, they went to.
Weaver had this idea, this vision in his head. He could, at a push of a button, he could go from New York to California, to London, to Australia. That was the vision he had, right?
That's right. It kept you in instantaneous touch wherever you were in the country with what was going on in the country and the world. And if you missed the top of the hour or the bottom of the hour, which you had to traditionally listen to radio for these comedy and variety shows, didn't matter because the content of Monitor would change every few minutes. They might have a festival in San Francisco, a breaking news story in New York City, something going on in Chicago or Cleveland. They would be there. Again, hosted by these big names like Dave Garroway, Hugh Downs. People knew them from television, all right? They hosted this throughout the weekend. It was incredible. People said it couldn't possibly work.
It lasted for 20 years.
A smash success, did nothing less than save the NBC radio network and keep it solvent for 20 years.
Dennis, 2 questions. First part, why did Monitor work, and why the fascination for you?
It worked because it was radically different. People had never heard anything like Monitor until the day it went on the air. Again, radio was much like television turned out to be, very much set in its ways, top of the hour, bottom of the hour. Monitor was formless. Weaver called it a kaleidoscopic phantasmagoria, which meant virtually nothing, and it meant everything. It meant that no matter where you were in the country, whether you were in your car, on the beach, at home, you could tune in at any point of that broadcast day or that broadcast weekend and be fascinated with something brand new. It could be a comedy routine by the likes of Bob Hope, Woody Allen, Phyllis Diller, Nichols and May, Bob and Ray, sports, variety. It was fascinating. For me, it became my career. I tuned into Monitor. First time I ever heard it was on KMJ Radio on a Saturday morning in the early 1960s. I listened to rock radio when I was growing up, and I tuned into KMJ, and I heard this thing called Monitor. Never heard anything like it. It sounded so big.
Yeah.
Coming out of Radio Central, so interesting. So I wanted to do Monitor. I wanted to work on Monitor. I went into broadcasting simply because I thought it was fascinating.
So it had a major influence on you.
And when the biggest, I'm still in broadcasting because of it. When nobody wrote the book after Monitor went off the air, I said, why couldn't I write that book? So I started doing some research, wrote the book, changed.
With the help of your son.
Oh, absolutely. He helped me put the website, monitorbeacon.net, on the internet. It's there to this day with hours of Monitor audio, et cetera, et cetera.
Monitorbeacon.net, if you want to go check out the website.
Exactly.
And,
exactly.
Now, Pat Weaver named James Fleming as the executive producer, and you were, I was reading in the book that Dave Garroway, of course, he was the first host of the Today Show.
That's correct.
The first host of Monitor. He didn't want to host Monitor. And by the way, they were not hosts. They were
communicators.
Thank you.
That is right. That is right. Garraway thought it wasn't going to work. Weaver's people came to him and said, you know, Pat would like you to do it. And Dave said, well, I really don't think so. Well, if Pat wants me to, I will. It won't last. Well, it lasted for 20 years. Now, picture this, though. Garraway, who was arguably one of the biggest, no question, one of the biggest names in television at that moment.
Right.
Had a great radio career. It was the host of the Today Show. He hosted Today 5 days a week, hosted Sunday Night Monitor from 7 to 10 o'clock, every Sunday night for 6 years until he left the Today Show. He would often
Grueling.
Grueling. He would often have to sleep in his office after hosting Monitor, getting off at 10 o'clock on Sunday night, so that he could be up at 3 o'clock in the morning to host the Today Show. Did it for years, and of course it became a smash hit.
You know, if you're interested in broadcasting and you really are into radio or even television for that matter, you know, this should be taught in the colleges. This is a history lesson right here in the television or radio medium, I should say, and how, you know, radio was phasing out, television was coming in the early 50s. Here's a show, a radio show that saved radio, lasted 20 years. It is simply amazing. And some of the other hosts, big names back in the 50s, right?
Well, yeah.
Garraway,
50s,
Hugh Downs.
Right. You had Gene Rayburn,
yes.
Rayburn, Ed McMahon, Bill Cullen, Henry Morgan. All of these folks had great ties to television. What was interesting is that virtually every announcer of The Tonight Show on NBC became a host on Monitor.
Including Ed McMahon,
That's
as
correct.
you just said.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Gene Rayburn had been Steve Allen's announcer on The Tonight Show. Of course, McMahon was Johnny Carson's. That's the way it worked. And virtually everybody hosted who was on NBC television hosted Monitor at some point. It was a fascinating show, the forerunner of modern talk radio, by the way.
Could Monitor work in today's format?
No question. It would absolutely work.
Why doesn't somebody do it then?
It would be very expensive to put on the air. Think about the talent they had hosting that show and doing sports for the show. You had Mel Allen doing sports for Monitor.
But you would
as well
think
as
with today's
hosting.
technology, Dennis, it would be easier and less expensive.
But remember also that there are only really two radio networks still in existence in the United States, as we know them now, ABC Radio and CBS. So it would work because on weekends there's a dearth of original programming on virtually every station in the country. Of course it would work and it would be a success.
I'm waiting for KMJ Radio to start up Monitor again.
And KMJ Radio carried it for 20 years, as you know. They were an NBC Radio affiliate.
All right, Dennis Hart is our guest, 559-265-4331 if you want to join the conversation. The book is called Monitor, the second edition. He's going to let me finish reading this the second time through before I give it back to him. It's a great, incredible history lesson on radio. Back with your phone calls, I hope, in just a moment.
Fall for Me TV. This fall on Me TV, Remington Steele.
It's definitely an emergency.
Oh yeah, also Emergency.
Please stay with me.
And more familiar faces.
You act like I've never been on television before.
Me TV continues to deliver the shows you remember.
I remember.
And you may discover shows you've never seen before.
Is that a threat?
Fall for Me TV. For a complete schedule, go to MeTVNetwork.com.
And of course, the fans going crazy at AT&T Park last night, Dennis, Game 6, National League Championship Series. I just wanted to show some video from my perspective. I was there last night, of course, attended the game. How do you think this country stacks up now. Do you think that sports in general has become such a big, it's like a religion?
Don't think there's any question about it. You look at college football, pro football, baseball. It is our great diversion right now. We spend more money on it, betting-wise, game attendance-wise. It's really remarkable. You might call it a narcotic, a diversion, etc.
Yeah.
But, I love sports. I mean, I'm a big college football fan. I'm a big baseball fan.
It's an addiction for some
people. It is.
It's a diversion, an addiction, whatever name you want to put on it. But I've read on occasion that football, pro football, the betting across the board is like $1 billion a year.
Pro football's the kahuna in this country, I think. There's no question about that.
Yeah, there's no question. Now, how do you think the television networks are covering sports these days? Do you like the announcers, or do you turn the sound down oftentimes like I do and watch the game?
Well, now, see, being a broadcaster, I value the announcers, okay? I think partisans look at announcers, if they've had any connection at all with other teams, and say, well, they're really biased against my team, et cetera, et cetera. See, I don't see that. The network announcers, I think, do generally a very, very good job.
There's a lot of homework involved.
Yeah, there is. It's not easy to be an announcer. You have to actually know something about this. A lot of criticism of Joe Buck of Fox for this series because of his connection with St. Louis. His dad, Jack, was the great announcer for the Cardinals for many years.
And his sidekick, Tim McCarver, former Cardinal player.
Of course, etc. But, I think Joe does a pretty good job. Every major announcer gets ripped apart, all right? Kurt Gowdy got ripped apart for years.
I love
Dick
Kurt
Enberg,
Gowdy.
etc. They were giants in broadcasting. It's a matter of where you're looking at it through the prism like political junkies do right now, through a closed bubble. Gosh, they're criticizing my team. They're biased against my team. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Well,
they cover a lot of games during the course of a year. Joe Buck does a lot of broadcasting. He's really not biased against the Giants, in my opinion.
Right, and he does a lot of homework, and it is difficult work to travel from one game to another. Yes, he gets paid for it, but there's a lot of studying to do of the players.
That's correct.
And going through the books and knowing your material.
Yep.
There's no question about it. Now,
Yep.
tonight, we've got the big debate. Romney and President Obama, the third debate. It's on foreign policy. How do you think this is going to go? And the moderator this time is going to be from
Bob
CBS
Schieffer
News.
of CBS, yeah. Well, do debates make a difference? Even though virtually everybody says Mitt Romney won the first debate, there is disagreement about whether President Obama came out ahead in the second debate. The polling seems to show still that it hasn't made a great deal of difference. You still have this absolute split down the middle of this country. It is remarkable. The latest poll showing a 47-47 split. It's remarkable.
Let me take this quick phone call here. Good morning. You're on Connect with Me with Dennis Hart. How are you?
I'm good this morning, thank you.
Good. What's your question?
I was wondering where good old John Malos is from Channel 30.
Well, I believe John is retired, is he not?
John has not been on Channel 30 for many years, of course. He went to Channel 47 years ago, and he's now retired from broadcasting. That's right. And he was doing some nonprofit work. But no, he's out of broadcasting and hopefully having a very nice retirement.
And if you watch Me TV on a regular basis, you'll see John Wallace doing the promos for this network, Me TV network, for all these various programs, the oldies but goodies from the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
I worked with John at KMJ Radio 40 years ago. He was the news guy along with Roy Isom on KYNO Radio when it was a rock radio station. I was a kid at Fresno State.
You're dating yourself.
Well, I'm a very young man. I was only 5 years old at the time, of course, but John's a good guy. I've known him for 40 years.
Yeah, he's retired, but he still does the promos for our station here, our network here, called Me TV, memorable entertainment television. But getting back to the debate, how's Bob Schieffer going to do? Compare him to the other two moderators.
Well, first of all, Bob Schieffer is going to get the same criticism that the other moderators have gotten. We're now so polarized in the United States where the moderator becomes the lightning rod if a candidate is perceived to have won or lost by, the candidate's supporters.
Should a moderator interject themselves in the debate or stay out of it the way Jim Lehrer did?
Well, I think that's a matter of style. If a candidate has said something that contradicts certain facts that are somewhat widely known, I don't think it's the moderator's job just to let it slide by, nor is it a newspaper's job to just let somebody say something that, is demonstrably true.
Even in a debate?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Now, there were two different styles. Lehrer was very laid back, and he was almost overridden by the two candidates. Candy Crowley interjected herself.
Right.
I think perhaps a little bit stronger than she should have at a point or two. But the point of the debates is not the moderator, it's the candidates. I think we have to get off the idea that somehow the moderators are biased against my candidate, your candidate. That's just one
Forget all that.
Well, yeah, because, again, it's part of the polarization of the United States in politics right now. We're more divided than I've ever seen us.
Right.
And it's almost outrageous. One of these poor devils, Obama or Romney, is going to win. They have to govern, and the way we've set it up right now, they're both going to fail. They can't possibly govern.
All right, Dennis Hart is here on the other side of the break. We're going to talk a little bit more about his book and about some of the changes coming up at KMJ Radio and the media here in Fresno, television, radio, whatnot. We're going to run the gamut. We're back with more and your phone calls, 265-4331 in just a moment.
Is taking care of laundry taking too much of your time? Have you become a missing mom? With a new fast, efficient washer and dryer from Ventura TV Video Appliance, you'll spend more of your day the way you want.
This Amana Super Capacity Washer Dryer Pair is now just $6.99, and this heavy-duty Maytag Super Capacity Washer Dryer Pair is only $8.99.
Don't spend your life on laundry. Upgrade today at Ventura TV Video Appliance and save.
Well, a little bit of taste of last night's game, the last pitch, of course.
I thought you were a Yankees fan.
I
find you're a Giants
an A's fan too, but I love all three. I love the Yankees because of their history.
Yeah.
And they've had a slew of announcers that have gone through there. Remember Dizzy Dean?
Of course. Well, the game of the week on CBS with Pee Wee Reese, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely, in the early days. I remember Russ Hodges and Lon Simmons when they were the voices of the Giants on KMJ Radio.
Well, my three teams are the Giants, the A's, the Yankees, and the Red Sox in that order. And I like the Yankees and Red Sox because of their history. But I also like the Raiders and 49ers. But back to your book.
All right.
Great book on Monitor. We talked a little bit about politics. I know you've been at KMJ. You're a highly respected newsman. Some changes. I guess Limbaugh and Hannity are gone out of KMJ, but not KMJ's decision to take those
They're
programs
not gone
off.
yet. Yeah, right. At KMJ, really, we had no say in that. The owners of Limbaugh's syndicator, all right, a Premier Radio Network, Clear Channel owns the syndicator, decided that they wanted to pull him off, and they've done this at a number of stations around the country, AM radio stations, because they own some stations in Fresno. KMJ they do not own. So they wanted Limbaugh to come off our air and go on to their stations. They have some FM stations, and we obviously would have liked him to have stayed. He's been with us for his entire broadcast life virtually, as has Sean Hannity, but there was nothing we could do to keep them. So they're going to be changes. It's going to be one of the biggest, I think, series of changes in Fresno radio, probably in the history of the medium here.
How will it change the face of radio, do you think, in the Fresno market? Well, not only here in the Fresno market, but from here to the coast.
Well, KMJ is number one in the market and has been for a long, long period of time, virtually its entire broadcast life, 90 years. So we're going to go local. We're going to have local talk show hosts virtually throughout the broadcast day, increase our news presence on the air. I don't have the details on how that's going to work in terms of who the hosts are going to be. I have no idea. But we're going to be intensely local, and that's a good thing for the community, I think, because there are a lot of issues that need discussion.
But you'll have the finger on the pulse as far as news is concerned, because I rely on KMJ for news a lot. Top of the hour, bottom of the hour. I want to know the latest of what's going on. Let's go to Dennis Hart at the courthouse or whatever. Very good stuff. What about the television market here? A lot of changes. Television is not the same. You don't have to know a whole lot to get on television these days.
Well, you said that, not me.
Well, I mean, it seems like all you have to do is know how to read a teleprompter.
Well, television...
I mean, that's just my vision.
For years, as you know, and I was at Channel 30 in the days when they overtook Channel 24, which had been #1 ever since that went on the air in the early 1950s. 30 overtook them in the 70s and has been #1 ever since in news, all right? And 30 has the most people doing news in the market. They do have a good operation, all right? And they have sort of left the other stations behind in the ratings. And that, I think, has harmed the market because as 30...
Really?
Sure, because as 30 has become so dominant, it has generated by far the most advertising revenue of the local news stations. Well, that's taken it away from the others. That's taken it away from 47, from 24. And I think 47 and 24 probably have fewer people working for them now than they did 15 or 20 years ago. And that's an unfortunate thing for the city. So, yeah, you've got a very dominant operation in Channel 30 in television
Is there
news.
anything that 24, 26, 47 can do to make a run at Channel 30? At this point, is it hopeless?
Well, you never say hopeless, but 30
Right.
has developed in terms of they have more reporters. They clearly can outcover the other stations in terms of personnel. That's an important thing. If there's a major spot story in the city, by spot news, breaking news, I'm talking about a major storm, a major, let's say, fire. 30 can pump people in and have more live reports than the other stations can. That counts for viewers.
Right.
They look at 30 and say, wow, they have a tremendous operation. Yeah, I think it would take, since they've been #1 for 35, 40 years, it would take a series of major mistakes on Channel 30's part to impact the ratings, and I don't see that
That's
happening.
not going to happen.
I don't think that's going to happen.
no.
They have smart people working
No.
over there. I know most of them. I work with, I see them in the street, on the street. They're a good operation.
Dennis, we have about 3 minutes left. Now, you've been in broadcasting since you were about 5 years old.
Yeah.
What's the difference between broadcasting now and what it was, say, in the 70s?
Well, part of it is that we've had an explosion of alternative news sources out there. And I think that's to the detriment of the traditional broadcasters. Back in the 70s, you had ABC, NBC, and CBS. And if you wanted to see news, you had to watch them. And they weren't bedeviled by these other operations, by 150, 200, 300 cable channels, by the internet, etc. I think the quality of news that's being done now is less than it was in the 1970s. They were more serious in the 70s and the 80s because they didn't have the Entertainment Tonights, the Access Hollywoods, doing this fake news about Hollywood celebrities and all of this stuff. And now I think television news has to be more entertaining to get the audience. Because
To compete, you mean?
To compete, yeah, because
Yeah.
the other stations are taking away the atmosphere, the ratings. If you put a test pattern on, somebody's going to watch a test pattern. Well, now you have 150 cable channels, and let's face it, most of them aren't doing great work, shall we say, okay? They really aren't. So now you've got this less of an audience, and they have to fight harder to get the audience. So they become more entertaining. You know, you do your on-air tweets, your on-air Facebook, your entertainment report.
So that's what they mean when they say it's the dumbing down of the news. That's what's happening.
To a great extent, the network newscasts are far different now than they
Yeah.
were 30 years ago. They're less serious than they were. Now, I'm not a look.
Well, CBS News is still fairly serious.
I think,
for the most
I think
part.
Scott Pelley's doing a great
Yeah.
job with the CBS Evening. The CBS Morning Show is a far more serious broadcast than Today and Good Morning America. I think it's a very, very good broadcast. But look, we are entertaining ourselves to death in this country. We divert ourselves to death with the media and with the internet. Broadcasting's been affected by that. You know, you didn't have reality shows at all in the early days of broadcasting. I mean, you had live dramas on the air out of New York, as you know. You had comedy, you had variety. Those were all
And you didn't have people with cell phones taking video of, say, a police officer beating up on a homeless
Right.
guy.
The-
So, I mean, that really has changed the face of news as well.
What news has changed, okay? Now there's this great emphasis on breaking news. You see these great animated open breaking news, and it's a fire at a vacant house, or it's a non-injury accident. It's really not news, but it's that thing that's changed in terms of how do we keep the audience.
It's a sense of urgency. They
Yeah.
want to give the audience a sense of urgency.
The audience's attention span has withered to almost nothing now. You know, the average sound cut now on television, that's the interview with the person who's a newsmaker, is down to about 6 or 7 seconds.
Right.
Well, what can you say in 6 or 7 seconds that means anything?
Dennis, we're out of time. I don't want to get cut off, but
All right,
can
my
I
friend.
keep this a little while longer so I
Little
can
bit
read it a
longer,
second
but-
time?
Yeah, but I've got signatures in there from some of the monitor. I want it back.
No problem. You're coming back November the 12th.
I'll be here.
Okay.
I'll get the
Dennis
book
Hart
back
of
then.
KMJ, our good friend, and get his insight and analysis. Tomorrow, Larry Blagg from the raisin industry will be here to talk about the harvest season. It's coming to an end. All right. We're back tomorrow. Hey, don't forget our phone number, too, 265-4331. See you tomorrow.
Want more of me?
Me?
Go to MeTVFresno.com for schedules, information on your favorite shows, videos, pictures, and more. Go to MeTVFresno.com today. Exclusively brought to you by Ventura TV.